Hey Keaton, it's Mrs. Reddick. I wanted to follow up on your question about this assignment that you did yesterday. So the main thing that you're going to make sure that you've done is read through these three scenarios because it will help you to understand what is the difference between hourly, salary, and piecework wages. So the hourly wage is like what you get. So you work maybe 20 hours at Subway, you get 20 hours times whatever your hourly wage is. So let's say that it's $8. So 8 times 20, that's going to be your weight, or that's going to be what you get paid for that week because you're paid on an hourly basis. The second scenario is what's called a salary. That's what I get paid. So I, for the year, get a certain amount of money, and then that is divvied out, split up evenly across the year in my paychecks, regardless of how often or how much I work. So I could work 50 hours and I'm still going to be paid the same amount of money as I would if I worked 30 hours. So that's a salary. And then the third option is what's called piecework. It's kind of like a commission where you're paid based on the work that you do, the volume of work that you do. So that is a really risky one. It can be very lucrative, but it can also be very risky if you don't do a lot of volume in your production, because then you won't make very much. So if you look at this first discussion piece here, it says, what does full-time mean and what is the number of hours that make up a full-time work week? So think in terms of your job. Again, if you were to work a full-time schedule at Subway, how many hours would that be? And full time is typically 40 hours. That's typically what a business will consider full time, and it means that you work the maximum amount of time, or what they consider to be the maximum amount of time that is necessary in order to get certain benefits and get certain amounts of pay. After you go over that amount, then you start to get what's called overtime, and that's important to know as well. So as we look at this mass mailing for Music Madness, there are some different scenarios that go into the overtime scenario. So that's why I wanted to bring that up. But you have your three scenarios here again. This first scenario is actually the salary scenario. I'm not sure why they flipped it around. Would have been nice if they kept them in the same columns. But this first scenario is your salary, because you get $300 per week, and that is based on a 35-hour week. But it doesn't say here. I guess technically it could be an hourly job, but it looks to me, based on the fact that it's 300 per week, that it's set up more like a salary, although it doesn't say here whether or not, that this person would get paid more if they work more hours or less if they work less hours. So, it's a pretty flat fee, or pretty flat way of paying though. So we're gonna call this column the salary column. The second column is the hourly column, where the person is getting $7 per hour for that first 40 hours in a week. So for the full-time employee, they get $7 per hour for those 40 hours. Now, once they go into overtime, they start to make a little bit more, and they're making $10.50 an hour. So again, this is important to these questions that are below here. And then the student's going to work the hours that they're choosing, but they're paid 8 cents for each envelope that they stuff and label. So this is that piecework type of payment, and it is going to be based on the volume of envelopes that the person stuffs. So all of those details are what's important for these first couple of questions. So which of the options offers a wage, which offers a salary? So this is where you're looking at that, and I kind of already gave you the answers to that as to which of these scenarios are a wage, a salary, and a piecework. Then explain what is meant by overtime. I also explained that. What happens when you go into excess of 40 hours per week, and how much overtime pay. This is the only one that really shows an overtime situation. So again, that would be the one that you're going to be focused on to answer number 2, that last question in number 2. So number 3 is where we start to get into some math, which I know you were concerned about. So this first one, Angela worked for 3 weeks under option 1. So you need to look at option 1 and see, okay, this is the salary situation. So this is actually the easiest one to figure out because it's just a flat 300 per week. So no matter what she works, she's going to get 300 per week, and she's going to work 3 weeks at that salary. So 3 times 300 is what you're going to do for hers. For Tony, this gets a little more complicated because he's working for option 2, which is it's hourly, but it also goes up once he gets into overtime. It goes to a different rate per hour. So you're going to have to do a couple of things in order to get the amount for this. You want to look at how much he worked in regular time in that $7 per hour range, which is the first 40 hours that he works. So in the first week, he worked 36 hours. So all of his hours were paid out at $7 an hour, right? Because he didn't get to 40 hours. The second week, he got to 47 hours. So he did 40 hours at that $7 rate, but then he had $7 that was over. That was considered overtime. It was over those 40 hours. So at those 7 hours would actually be paid out at $10.50 an hour. So that's how you would figure out how much he made that second week. And then the third week, again, he worked more than the 40 hours. So he had 40 hours at $7 an hour, and then he had another 10 hours to come up with that 50 hours that he made $10.50 per hour during that overtime. So then you'd add that together to come up with the third week. And then to come up with what Tony made the whole entire time, you'd add all 3 weeks together. So that one is a little complicated. And then this last one, the C, Ashley's option, she is doing the per envelope. So you just take that per envelope rate, which is 8 cents per envelope, and take it with the number, or multiply it by the number of envelopes she actually did, and that is 10,000. Okay, so for as far as Ashley having made more money, if she chose an option 1, you really just need to consider, she's working 35 hours here and making $300 per hour. So based on the 8 cents per 10,000, or for the 10,000 envelopes, determine how much you think, how much is that? And if she had worked 35 hours doing that, if that's what it took her to do those 10,000 envelopes each week, then it may be apples to apples, but we don't really know how much how long she worked, how many hours. So whatever answer you come up with, just make sure that you explain why you came up with that. So if you assume that she worked equitable hours, and then one makes more sense to, it comes out to a higher amount than the other, then just explain it that way to me, just so I know that you understand that there may be a difference there based on the hours. And then this last one, you again need to figure out what is 120 envelopes. If he stuffs 120 envelopes per hour, he's making 8 cents times 120. And then that's what he's making per hour. So then you would just compare that to the other option, which they're saying how many hours would he have worked under option 1. So we know he works 35 hours under option 1, and he's working, he's making $300 a week. So he's not quite making $10 an hour in that scenario. So depending on what he's making with 120 envelopes per hour at 8 cents a pop, that may be more, it may be less. So that's what you need to determine. And then you'll know whether or not it made more sense to do option 1. And then you would do the same thing for option 2 or 3. Just look at those. You know that he's making 8 cents times 120 per hour, because that's 120 envelopes per hour, because that's what he's able to stuff per hour. And then he's making $7 per hour here. So which one will be the higher amount? So that's how you're going to try to figure out these various questions. And if you still have questions after you view this video and take another look at the questions, let me know, and we'll work on another way to get you some of this information. I hope all is well, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.